What's up, folks? Welcome back to the Whoop Podcast, where we sit down with top athletes, performers, scientists, experts, and more to learn what the best in the world are doing to perform at their peak and what you can do to unlock your own best performance. I'm your host, Will Ahmed, founder and CEO of Whoop, where we are on a mission to unlock human performance. We've got a great guest this week, Josh Hart of the Portland Trail Blazers and Villanova fame. But first, a reminder, you can get 15% off a Whoop membership if you use the code WILL. That's W-I-L-L. Comes with the new Whoop 4.0. Okay, this week's episode, Josh Hart. Josh is coming off the best season of his career, something he attributes to an increased focus on rest, recovery, and nutrition. He explains how Whoop plays a critical role in his performance and tells us what he's learned from his Whoop insights both on and off the court. Josh and I discuss his journey to the NBA and how his dad would take him down to the courts late at night so they could practice together, winning a national championship at Villanova, and how his experience there prepared him for the league, what he's learned about sacrifice and how that benefits the very best, how competition fuels him, and how he looks at his Whoop data competitively. And we run down his Whoop data from the best game of his career. It should come as no surprise that when he woke up rested, recovered, and ready to go, he dropped 44 points on the Wizards. Okay, without further ado, here is Josh Hart. Josh, welcome to the Whoop Podcast.
Nah, man, appreciate you guys having me. I've been seeing it, and now I'm happy to be a guest.
No, we're lucky to have you. I've followed your career closely from Villanova and now a star in the NBA. Let's go back for a second here. Did you always have this dream of being a professional athlete, being a star in the NBA?
Yeah. Definitely had the dream of being an athlete. I loved baseball growing up, so I played baseball and basketball. And then I finally kind of just got more serious about basketball, probably in like middle school. And then since then, it was just like I want to play at the highest level. And obviously that was the NBA. And my dad, did an amazing job in terms of just helping me as much as he could, as much as his basketball knowledge led him to help me. And, luckily I got there, but it was always the dream.
So your dad, Moses, was a chef, and he'd come home like late at night, I understand, like 8, 9, 10 p.m., and you'd go out and shoot hoops with him at like sometimes as late as 11 p.m., and he read about how Michael Jordan like was working when other people were sleeping, so why can't Josh Hart? Is that right?
Yeah, exactly. We lived down the street from a school called Montrose Christian, which was actually at the time really good. Stu Vetter was coach there. KD went there. Gravis Vasquez, some
Yeah,
pros,
sure.
but they were like a huge powerhouse in terms of high school basketball. So they had, it's called the Annex, and it was like it was really just a parking lot, like just a big parking lot that people parked at for games and those kind of things. And it had 2 full basketball courts, just concrete outdoor courts. So when my dad would get home from work, he'll drive up there, park at half court, put his high beams on, and just flash. And so we have some light, on the basketball hoop, and we just go out there and just shoot hoops or just do drills or do those kind of things for, hours at a time. So it's something that was fun because I loved basketball, and it gave me great time just to kind of hang out with him and grow with him.
At what point did you realize you were really good?
Probably sophomore year in high school, I knew I was pretty good, and I knew I would definitely play at the next level. But in terms of pro, I knew probably during or after my sophomore year, and I was like, all right, I actually really have a chance to make it to the league, and I really have to lock in on the next year or two and really develop so I can be in that position to get there.
Well, basketball is an interesting sport because height and athleticism play such an important role. And in high school, it's a little unclear how your body's developing. It sounds like around sophomore year, you're thinking, okay, I've got what it takes. When you were thinking about where to go to school, why did Villanova stand out?
So the biggest thing for me was I felt that Coach Wright would help me develop in 2 areas. Obviously, on the court was the biggest thing. They had a really good pedigree with guards, dating back with Scotty Reynolds, Kyle Lowry, Randy Foye, Mike Nardi, and I can just go down the list. So they had a really good pedigree in terms of developing guards and those kind of things, but also they were very high character. I knew I was going to really develop as a man and become my own person off the court. And that's something that really stood out to me. And it was something that I kind of wanted to, what did my college experience to be like? Obviously, first time, living away from your parents really on your own. And it really shows you who you are. And I wanted to be around good people, high character people. A lot of people that he was recruiting were the same kind of person that I was. And that's kind of what I wanted because, like I said, it was first time growing up. I mean, first time being on your own, and you really start to find yourself and find out who you are. And I, wanted to be around high character people to help me, find that.
What were some things you started to find about yourself? I mean, as a young man living away from home for the first time.
There was a couple things. One, I realized like I was social, but like even now, like I'm social, but I don't really have like real close friends. And that's something like I kind of realized that I never really let too many people in. And that's something I kind of wish I didn't do a little bit in college. If you look at me now, all my friends date back since high school. Obviously I had my teammates at Villanova and guys that I have really, good bonds with and that, but like people that I talk to every day is just all people from high school. So I kind of learned that about myself, and I kind of wish I wasn't as closed off a little bit, as I was then. So that's something I kind of learned and kind of wish I wasn't, but it was that. And then I started to realize that I was just kind of like my own person. I think a lot of times when you're growing up, you do what your parents want you to do, or you follow kind of in your siblings' footsteps, and you do stuff that they do, or hand me down stuff, or do those or those kind of things. But I kind of really realized that I'm my own person. I can make my own decisions, and I really started to kind of become my own person. And I think that was the biggest thing.
If you think about the friends around you at that time, what were they saying to you as you started to take off as a basketball player and become, a national star?
It was cool because teammates wise, you've been in locker rooms and that. Like usually, like you always
Yeah.
you hype each other up and you do those kind of things. So whenever you're in the locker room or you're on the court, like you think you're the guy and those kind of things. But it was cool. Just the friends that I had, they always would keep me level headed. My wife now, my girlfriend at the time, would just kind of keep me level headed. Those guys, when needed, knock that ego down to to appropriate size. So it was kind of cool because I had a little bit of both, best of both worlds in that situation.
Well, and it sounds like you met your now wife in college, which must have been a fascinating journey for both. Oh, high school.
High school, yeah.
Wow, good for you.
High school sweethearts, I guess.
But that's an amazing life partner to find when you're in high school and have her be with you through your whole successful career and, kind of see you through that whole journey.
It's something cool because obviously I have like I said, I'm really closed off. So I have obviously a really good bond with her. Went to high school. We met each other, I think I was 15, 27 now. So we've known each other for, 12 years. We dated, or I guess been together, up till now, which is, almost, going on 11 years. So, someone I look to, for all things, someone that I confide in. It's always good to have someone that knew you before. Once you get to be a success, sometimes you have to question why people are around. Are they around for because they're genuine people? Or are they around because they want something from you? They want to live the lifestyle. Or they want kind of kickback or something like that. So that's something that I was looking into the future. That's something I was always worried about. And being able to have her, someone that's known me since I was high school when I had no money, that was paying for my my meals, or dropping me off at school, or dropping me off at the house, and those kind of things. It puts things in perspective, and it's helped me get to where I am.
It's funny listening to you say that. I mean, it's crazy to think what a star you were at Villanova, but at the same time you were worrying about meals and basic expenses when the NCAA in general was profiting off of your success, and of course a lot of your teammates and other players. Like, do you look back on that now as a successful professional athlete who's obviously made a lot of money? Like, Do you look back on that being kind of crazy, or do you just sort of accept that's the nature of the program?
Both, and obviously now it's changed with the NIL deals and those kind of things. People can get, not paid, but they can get endorsed and those kind of things. So it's better now. But in when I was there, and the first couple of years out, I'm like hate I hate the NCAA. Like it's just because it's like an age old like argument. People who weren't athletes or they weren't on scholarship, they're like, oh, you get your tuition and boarding and all that for free. So you had you had those arguments, and then you also like I get that, but like these schools, this NCAA, they're making billions of dollars, millions of dollars off of the individual, and people there, they were, especially at Villanova, like, people are well off. Like they're not missing meals or they're not worried about that. That for us, like, we weren't we didn't come from like well off backgrounds. I had no actual, money. Think about it this way. I played in the national championship game where we beat Carolina and Chris Jenkins hit, the buzzer beater, which is probably
Iconic
um,
shot.
the yeah, probably like one of the most, that and like the Christian Laettner shot, like one of the most iconic college basketball shots ever, right? And Chris ended up not really playing professional or having like a short stint playing professionally. But think about it, like this guy, and when he did it, he was a junior, came back for his senior year. But this guy hit one of, if not the biggest shot ever in college basketball. It was all over the place, and he couldn't get anything from it. Some of these guys won't have the opportunity to play professionally, but they're good players who can generate revenue for themselves and use that as a stepping stool, for the next step in their life.
You mentioned the famous national championship game. What was that whole experience like for you, winning the national championship? I mean, March Madness is so iconic in itself. I think you were the leading scorer on that team, and of course that was a big
Yeah,
deal.
it was cool, man. Like we were on top of the world, so to say, for that whole year. But it was fun. I mean, you watch college basketball, especially March Madness. You watch that since you were a kid. Once at the end of the tournament, they played a one shining moment song. And you have all the highlights from the tournament. You have the upset. You have everything that goes around. Everyone's watching March Madness. So to win that and win it in the fashion that we did, it was just so surreal. It was just so cool, and I didn't realize how much weight that held, with other teams, other NBA guys, and doing those kind of things. Even now, people look at me, they're like, "Hey, man, you got a national championship." Like it's just one of those things where it's like you carry it around with you, and like people look at you like, "Oh, he's a winner. Oh, he's a national champion. Oh, he's this, that, and the other." It was surreal at the time, and even now.
Well, it's amazing. So you go on to the NBA. You're having the best season of your career right now, so congratulations. What's changed for you as a player in the NBA versus, say, your college days? And you're on Whoop, so we'll get into that in a minute. But let's talk a little bit about training and recovery, how you think about your body.
Yeah, so I have a really bad sweet tooth. And if you ask anybody in college and all that, they know like if you wanted snacks, you wanted candy, ice cream, and all that, you just go to my dorm, and I'll have just a plethora of all of that. So in college, and even like the first year or two when I was in LA, eating habits were not good. Like, and it was weird because the Villanova coach Wright and our strength coach Shaq, they're very healthy. They had like the best stuff for us. When we're having meals at hotels, it'll be like grass fed beef. It'll be like wild caught fish and those kind of things. Like it was just super super healthy. And I still had a really bad sweet tooth. So first couple of years didn't really pay too much attention to it. Just did that. But then as I got to got traded to New Orleans, I started really looking at my diet and hiring a chef and really trying to figure out how I can be at my peak performance, but not also just peak performance, but also peak recovery. Because the biggest thing with the NBA is always about recovery. Because you have 82 games, not including preseason or playoffs. You're traveling every other day, it feels like, unless you have a homestand. So you're on planes, you're going to different time zones, you're doing all these things. So the biggest thing for you to do is recover, and that's obviously eating right, hydrating, and kind of just having other things like infrared sauna that I bought that really helped, get the toxins out of my body and stuff like that. So it's something that I really dialed in once I got to New Orleans, honestly. And actually, that's how I, started with Whoop because Drew Holiday was my teammate, and I saw him using it, and I was like, all right, like that's cool. It tracks my sleep, it tracks my output, it does all those kind of things. All right, like let me try that out. And I've been doing it for the last couple of years. That's kind of how my thought process and my actions changed from being a 18, 19, 20-year-old kid loving candy to now trying to eat as healthy as possible, trying to get my sleep, trying to do those kind of things to help me be at peak performance.
Well, it's been awesome to see you on Whoop, and thanks for being part of our community. And talk for a second about sleep. What sorts of things have you found really help you with sleep? And by the way, one thing I think is underestimated for fans of, about pro athletes, like you guys will play an 8 p.m. game, you're all jacked up like in the fourth quarter to try to win the game, and theoretically you should be asleep like 60 minutes after that game. So it's hard to go from that high of high in front of tens of thousands of fans to then all of a sudden, boom, being asleep.
Game days and travel days is always kind of tough, especially for me how I play. I'll take like some pre-workout type thing, so I'll
Like
get some good
caffeinated drinks
caffeine
and stuff.
in and all
Yeah.
that stuff. Yeah, so like my body would be going 100 miles an hour, and then my game's over at 9 o'clock, 9:30. I get to my house at 10:15. Sometimes, the wifey or myself wants to eat, and we go somewhere, get dinner, and we don't get to the house until like 11, 11:30, 12. And that's like I got to wake up at 9 the next morning. But I'm sitting in my bed until 2 o'clock, like just like can't go to sleep. I'm just like uneasy, restless, and all those things just because the adrenaline is going from the game. So you have that when you do that, and then you fly, or you take the whole day of flying. And I hate flying, so I'll go to sleep when I fly, and then I land, and I'm just like, well, I just slept for 4 hours. It's now 11 o'clock, and I'm not tired at all. So it's like the sleep is probably the toughest thing for me, but there's been a couple things that I've done in terms of just trying to, get off my phone, uh, you know, 30 minutes, 45 minutes before trying to go to sleep. Or, one of the products I work with is the company Thorn, and they have this called Pro Recovery Drink that has, what's the ingredient that it has?
Magnesium,
Um,
melatonin, something.
Magnesium,
Yeah.
yes, magnesium. So I'll take that, 30, 45 minutes before I go to sleep. And that'll kind of help me just kind of relax, so my body just kind of relax and kind of get into, going to sleep, and help me get to REM quicker and stay in REM and do those kind of things so my body can really recover. So it's sleep definitely is tough, in the NBA with the travel and the games and all that, but you just got to try to find little areas, to maximize it.
Well, you shared some of your Whoop data with us. You actually get like a lot of REM and slow wave sleep. So you're a very good sleeper. Like you're averaging, roughly over 4 hours of REM and slow wave sleep combined a night. And that makes you not just a great professional athlete, but a great sleeper, which often those things can be correlated. March 13th, a couple weeks ago, you had your most points ever in a game. 44 points, great night. And you shared your Whoop data. You had 91% recovery, which was their highest since January. Your
Ooh.
HRV was 130. Are you pulling up the data right now?
Yeah, I'm pulling it up.
Your resting heart rate, 44 beats per minute. That's pretty damn low. And you got 2 hour 36 REM, 2 hour 9 minute slow wave sleep. So that was a nice cocktail of recovery right before
hmm
that career high.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think that was a coincidence. I had a heck of a game with having 91% recovery and those kind of things. And the biggest thing, like I said, is just the recovery aspect of it. And honestly, I didn't really put too much emphasis on it until I got Whoop, and not because I'm like, oh, Whoop, I have to lock in or those kind of things, but because I'm able to see and actively see, my REM sleep or see my recovery or those kind of things, it makes me more conscious of it. So now it's like, I feel like I'm an old guy. Sometimes I'm like, oh, I gotta wake up at 9 o'clock or whatever, not nine in the morning. I'm like, all right, like I try to be in bed by 10. I'm just like, all right, I'm gonna be in bed by 10. I'm gonna have Netflix on or something, and I'm gonna slowly go to sleep. So that means I can go to sleep by 11. I can get like a good 9, 10 hours in, get my REM sleep and do all those kind of things. So that was like the coolest thing. Was actually why I started Whoop. Not even about the performance but it was the recovery aspect of it, because sometimes you don't notice how bad your sleep is. Or you don't realize how little you're sleeping until you actually see it charted, and then you're like, okay, wow, I can not do this at night, or I can hop off the video games an hour early, and it can make a monumental difference in terms of your recovery. So once I started seeing it, once I started tracking it, then I was like, okay, now I know what I have to do. I have to do these things before bed, or I have to try to be in bed by 10 o'clock, or I have to try to take little naps throughout the day if I have something where I have to wake up earlier and I can't get as much sleep. Let me take a nap during that day to help me get to the recovery that I want.
Yeah, I mean, you described that so well. It's the key theme for us is, you can only really manage what you measure. And all athletes will say
Exactly.
recovery is important, but then if they don't have something to measure it, to kind of understand what are the ins and outs of my recovery, there's just a lack of accountability. And you described it so well, just this sort of personal accountability you now feel, seeing your recovery and thinking about sleep every day. I love that. And it was a lot of the inspiration for starting Whoop was this idea that athletes are going to want this, one, because they understand recovery, but two, because they're also competitive creatures, right? And, we want to know what's going on in our bodies. And if someone's faster than you, the same way someone's better than you at sleeping, all of a sudden you're thinking, well, maybe I should be getting more sleep than this person, right? Maybe I should be recovering faster than this person. So it changes the paradigm for which you're even thinking about your body.
Yeah, exactly. And like I said, we're competitive people. We're competitive creatures. So even like this past year in New Orleans, Garrett Temple uses Whoop. So there be that time we'll get into the facility and we're like, yo, what's up? And then we'll shout like yo, 86. And it's like, so I just know, oh,
I
he
love
had
that.
86%. And like, we're in like a little group. We're like, oh, he had 86% recovery. And I don't think I'm like, all right, like, I got to outdo him tomorrow. I got to be in bed by this time. I got to do those kind of things. And it's, like you said, it's cool. It's fun, especially when you have a friend or two that are in it and you're in a group or you guys talk all the time and you kind of share that and you're like, and you can look like, yeah, or like one of my good friends, Stan Williams, who's actually the strength coach at New Orleans right now. He had it, and we'll go back and forth with that, or he'll like peer into mine and he'll be like, "Dang, bro, you ain't get no sleep last night." I'm like, yeah, man, I was tossing and turning. I ain't go to sleep till 2 game day. You know what I mean? So it's cool, especially when you have people that use the product and you can kind of compete and kind of have fun with it. Then it makes it an even better experience because you're able to maintain and track your own progress, but also kind of compete against your friends with it.
When you wake up with a lower recovery than you'd like, even on a game day, for example, how do you mentally handle that? And do you change anything about your behavior or what you'll do that day before the game?
Sometimes, like especially I feel like this year, my routine was more down pat. Like I'll go to shoot around, I'll come back, chill for an hour or two, maybe play some video games, and now like I have to sleep for like 2 hours, or hour and a half. I have to get like this little window in. And when I got traded, like that was all trying to get time zones and all that. I was trying to like switch on my routine and all that. But um, it was like I'll wake up and I'll see like, dang, I only had 50% recovery. I only had 60% recovery. So I'm like, all right, let me tack on like 30 more minutes into the snap, and then do that. And then I go. Then I'm like, I feel a little tired. Let me and I'll take, like I said, I'll take pre-workout or pre-game drink. I'm like, maybe I might need a little bit more. And like there'll be games where I'll take my pre-workout and I know I didn't sleep well. I know I didn't get a good sleep or whatever. I'll be like, I'll have that, and then I'll have like a little Celsius on top. So I'm amped. So I'm just like, all right, I'm just running on it. The only bad thing about it is Like it will kind of make up for not having that recovery. But then I know if I did that, like I'm going to be up until 3 o'clock in the morning, 3 o'clock in the morning. But it goes into my like thought process in terms of like how I structure my day, just because I'm like, all right, if I sit there with 50% recovery, I know I'm not going to be myself. I'm not going to be at peak performance later that night. So I try to structure my day around that in terms of taking naps or the things I eat or drink before a game, just because I'm like I know I have to have even some extra fuel because I wasn't able to recover. I wasn't able to get back to where I wanted to in terms of recovery wise.
In terms of what additional stuff you might eat, what would that include?
And this is one of the bad habits I have. Like I'll eat like lunch at like 12, and then I'll have a game at 7, right? And I'm not a great eater. Like I'll try to eat healthy, but I'm not a great eater in terms of like I'll eat a meal, and then like game days I don't eat until after the game. So like I would have one meal, and like I'll get to the arena, and like I always have like peanut butter and jelly, um, popcorn, and Mike and Ike's. Like I like it, I'll have like those kind of things that I'll snack on that. But I know like all right, if I don't have something, I'm like all right, let me have some type of like protein bar. Let me have like some more fruit, like a banana that helps, just with cramping, but also just helps with sustaining energy and those kind of things. So I'm like, all right, if I don't do that, then I have to make sure if I'm snacking, I do that, or I'll just have an extra meal when I get to the facility. Like I need something to kind of power me through this game or this workout or whatever it is. So those are like the kind of things that I will kind of do. Like I said, I'll take the pre-work, my little pre-game workout drink. And then if I need the added bump, I also have like a little Celsius or something like that, a little caffeinated energy drink. But that's something that all varies in terms of how well I recovered.
Who are other athletes that you admire or you listen to, or resources for you as you think about becoming the best version of yourself?
Yeah, so Drew Holiday, who is one, who takes amazing care of his body. Kyle Lowry, someone who again takes
Another whoop
has
guy.
been at the highest level. Exactly, another whoop guy, someone who's been at the highest level for I don't know how many years, but someone who takes care of his body religiously. Who else? Jalen Brunson, some of the same. So like those guys, and even my year with Brown, I was able to kind of see how he kind of takes care of his body, the thing that he puts into his body, the time they put in the gym, not just on the court, but in the weight room or doing flexibility stretches in the treatment room. So I'm seeing those guys, and I'm taking bits and pieces from those guys.
You ever pick Mike Mancias's brain? This Mike Mancias is LeBron James's trainer.
Yeah. A little bit, not too much. I wish I did a little bit more because he's someone obviously who's at the top of his field. He's someone obviously working with one of the best athletes, just athletes in general of all time. So I wish I was in the space I am now. You
Yeah, when
know,
you met
three,
him. Yeah.
3 4 years ago when I was in LA with those guys, and I could have picked the brain even more. So
And Mike got on Whoop in like 2015, and LeBron
wow.
was probably one of our first like 100 users. It was pretty crazy just how
Oh wow.
early they adopted Whoop at the time, and certainly was like validating for us because we were this little startup no one had heard of at the time.
Yeah, nah, definitely, man. Because I know those guys, the way that they work, the way that they take care of his body is just something that's just so it's just crazy to see. And like I said, I saw it firsthand, only for a year, but you know why he's at the level that he is for as long is because he's able to take care of his body, that much. And obviously, it helps when you have that bankroll and you have you have so many resources you can kind of do it. But even when you're not there, you're able, at that level, you're able to take small bits and pieces of it, whether that's the work that you put in the gym or just taking little pieces of like or just wearing a whoop and being more conscious of your sleep or being more conscious of your workout or your patterns and doing those kind of things. So yeah, man, I wish I was able to pick their brain a little more, but.
Well, you're well on your way. The thing I've found in getting to meet a lot of professional athletes and be around that world is it seems like it's as much about like sacrifice and time when it comes to recovery as anything else. It's choosing not to go out. It's choosing to go to bed earlier. It's choosing to stay for 2 hours after the game instead of 15 minutes. It's like it's so time consuming to treat your body the way you guys treat your bodies at that level.
There was a couple times like I went out, and I actually don't really go out during the season, but there was a couple of times that I went out and I didn't even wear my whoop. Like normally I wear my whoop everywhere, but like it was like a 3 or 4 day span where I was like I'm not putting my whoop on because like I know my recovery is gonna be terrible. Like I'm gonna be in the red. I'm gonna be at like 2%, and then I'm gonna feel bad, and then I'm gonna visibly see it, and I'm like, yo, this feels even worse. So I didn't do that, but no, it takes sacrifice because it's like, all right, I'm not gonna go out. I'm not gonna go out, with some of my teammates because I need to get, because I especially myself, like how hard I play in games, like I need my rest. Like I take a beating in terms of just physically, just how I play. So I need, to let my body, rest and just relax. So like there's going to be times where your teammates are going out and you can't because you're like, yeah, I gotta get to bed. I gotta get some sleep. Or there's going to be certain activities that you would want to do, but yeah, I probably shouldn't because it's not going to help me out. Whether that's in terms of recovery or whatever it is, like it's not going to help me out. So you always have to have that sacrifice, and I don't think there's a professional athlete in this world, honestly, who's got to where they are without sacrificing anything, with doing
Totally.
everything that they wanted. That's not how it works. And like I didn't know how bad my sleep was until I started seeing it on Whoop. But now I also see how good it is. I also
Yeah,
see
right.
the benefits from sacrificing. So it's not like I'm sacrificing and I don't see the benefits of it. I don't reap the reward of it. I'm able to see how good my sleep was, or I wake up feeling refreshed, or I don't wake up feeling tired, and I'm able to kind of be at my best in terms of on the court just because I sacrifice and I was able to kind of let my body relax. So I was able to do better, just because of that.
Yeah, I mean, really well said. And if you look back on the last, let's call it 10 or 12 years, like, have there been certain ways that you've judged your overall health and fitness? I mean, obviously, looking at Whoop data for the past few years, that's one way to judge your health and fitness. I know some athletes who, like, they say if they're at a certain weight, they know that's their fittest weight. I know some athletes that have certain weights that they want to be able to lift. Like, oh, if I'm benching this or squatting this, or if my 40 time is this. Do you have any of that as a notion, or for you, is it more about how you feel? Like,
Yeah, for me, it's more about really more about how I feel, and obviously that thought process is always just dependent on the person and their beliefs and those kind of things. But for me, it's just about how I feel because I could go to the gym, as a basketball player, I can go to the gym, I can sit there, I can rep, 225 or do 400-pound deadlifts or do something
sure,
like that, and it doesn't translate onto the court
right.
or do those kind of things. So I try not to track in terms of what my weight output is, in the weight room or what my body weight is. Granted, I want to have like a target body weight of between 215 and 220, 225. Just like,
So fairly
that's kind of
narrow
like the
range.
least I
Yeah,
want. Yeah, fairly narrow, it's like a 10-pound window, but it's more so just about how I feel. And obviously when I'm, able to track, my output and my recovery and do those kind of things, it's easier to do that because I know I'm going to be waking up feeling refreshed when I get good sleep or I see those kind of things. So that's kind of what I do, just more so just the tracking with, obviously Whoop, but more so just how I feel, when I wake up.
do you have any mental practice like visualization or some kind of mindfulness meditation, anything like that?
Not yet, and that's something that I was always, my parents were a little bit old school, so I was just always just keep it moving, and I didn't really think too much of it. But especially now, I'm starting to try to be a little bit more in tune to my mental health side of it. And you can ask my wife, and she hates it. She wants me to, I'm a very prideful person. I don't really talk too much about my problems or those kind of
Sure,
things.
right, yeah.
So that's something that I think it is the next step for me. I worked on eating habits. I worked on trying to focus on, getting better sleep, getting better recovery, those kind of things. I think the next obstacle for me to work on is having people to talk to, like whether it's a therapist, Teamwise, or using some of the apps like Calm or Headspace, or doing those kind of things, just to kind of really start to feed myself mentally, because physically is it's one hat, it's one part of it, but especially during a season like ours, a lot of it is mental. So I think that's the next thing that I'm going to try to tackle.
I would if I were you. I certainly know plenty of athletes that don't have a formal practice, but I can't think of a professional athlete who I've met who's started trying that. Again, whether it's a visualization practice or some kind of meditation, and who hasn't found it beneficial in one way or another. That doesn't necessarily mean they do it before every single game or every single morning or whatever, but it's sort of like a new tool in your toolkit. The same way that you've figured out a few things to do before bed, or you've figured out a few foods not to eat. It's a tool that you can sort of rely on from time to time. And who knows, maybe it becomes something you do all the time.
There's a decent amount of athletes that I've talked to that do things like that. And, growing up and before I kind of actually started, seeing it, I always thought like, oh, like visualization, or like, meditating. I always thought it was like the monk style, like sit crisscross applesauce, like, and do that for, 45 minutes to an hour. Like that's always how I thought. And it was a really ignorant way of thinking. But now, like, I'll talk to people, and something that they do is not even, it might just be them waking up 5 minutes earlier, and kind of just sitting there and just thinking about how they can conquer the day, or doing little things like that, where it's something that's even not time consuming, something that's, takes a couple minutes out your day, and it just kind of helps them mentally. And that's something that I feel like, I could do, even though, I'm on the run, a lot of times, especially during the season, I'm on the, on the go doing those kind of things. But, you know, waking up 5 minutes earlier, and, just kind of sitting there, not being on my phone, just kind of, in a quiet room, and doing those kind of things, and just kind of thinking of, things I can get better at, and doing those kind of things is something that honestly I should really do. I'm saying it now, I should really do it, practice what I preach, but it's something that I think I definitely, is going to try to tackle.
Well, you try it and you let me know how it goes. We also see a positive response within Whoop data. Like typically, people who meditate sleep better, or they'll have a lower resting heart rate or a lower respiratory rate. So there's some general health benefits too, independent from performance. I'll say this: I mean, I've now interviewed and gotten to spend time with a lot of high performance people. Yes, sports, but also business leaders and elsewhere. And I've just been shocked how many people have some kind of meditative practice in their life, and often it's people you would never expect, like people who come across as like total killers, and here they are doing this sort of woo-woo thing in the morning. Last question for you: if you're talking to a star college athlete right now, what advice are you giving him about the road to making it?
I'll probably say just two things in terms of, actually one is one, on the court and, off the court, and we've talked all the time, this whole podcast about off the court, but on the court, the biggest thing I would say is just find your niche in this league, because it's something that this actually, it really resonated with me. I was in my senior year at Villanova. We played in Wells Fargo for some of our games, the arena that the Sixers play in. So when we would play down there, the day before we would practice there and do those kind of things, or we'd do shoot around there. So one day we did that, and then the Rockets were playing Philly that night. So we saw that me and a couple of the other seniors, Chris Jenkins and Darryl Reynolds and Coach Wright, we were able to see kind of their shoot around. And Pat Bev's, talk shit, however Pat Bev does to everybody, any and everybody that's going to listen to him.
Right.
And he said something to Coach Wright, and he was just like, not everyone can be a James Harden, but anybody can be a Pat Bev. Like I'm getting paid being a Pat Bev. And I kind of looked at that. I'm like that's a real thing, because some people are gifted scorers. Some people are just gifted physically, like KD, just like body types, Giannis. Those kind of people are gifted just physically that I can't compete with. but you can find your niche. And like mine is, rebounding, defensive intensity, playmaking, transition, doing those kind of things. So my thing to those guys would be find your niche, find what you're good at in this league, and do that to the best of your ability. And when you do that, that leads to winning, that leads to you getting paid. And that's, two things that we all, in this league, we all want. So there's that part of it. And then the other part is really lock in terms of how you take care of your body. And like I said, I wish I did it, right when I got to the league. Like right when you get to the league, get a chef, find, people to talk to in terms of mentally, and make sure your mental health is right. Get a, get a Whoop or get something that you're able to kind of track your performance and your sleep and those kind of things that really lock in on, how your body goes, because obviously one day the ball's going to stop bouncing for everybody, but we're only going to go as far as our body lets us take us. So we got to make sure we fuel our bodies to make sure that's going to be as long as possible. So those would be the two things. Just make sure you find your niche and make sure you take care of your body and make sure you take care of your mind.
Great advice, man. And this has been a real pleasure for me. And I hope we get to connect in person. You let me know next time you're in Boston or likewise when I'm in a city where you're playing. It'll be fun to meet up. But thank you for being on Whoop and thanks for coming on the podcast.
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me. And thanks for the, the product. For me, I always talk to, like we have a performance lady in Portland. I'm just like, I think Whoop is the best. And I'm like, and it's the most convenient for athletes because you have other things like Oura Ring, but it's like, I can't hoop in an Oura Ring. I can't do weights in an Oura Ring or those kind of things like Apple Watch. I can't do all that. But like, if you see me, I'm wearing my Whoop all the time. In games, I actually have it under my sleeve, the strap with the arm strap. So, so thank you for, like I said, having me on, and thank you for the product, man, because I know I love it, and I know there's a lot of athletes that love it that you don't even know love it. So thank you.
Thanks to Josh for coming on the Whoop Podcast. If you enjoyed this episode of the Whoop Podcast, be sure to leave a rating or review. Don't forget to subscribe. You can find us on social at Whoop, at Will Ahmed. And you can get 15% off a Whoop membership if you use the code WILL. That's WILL. All right, folks, that's all for now, and we will see you next week.